The first time Lena watched her dead husband laugh after treatment, the miracle seemed complete. She remembered the joke, the room, and his voice, and felt absolutely nothing. Eirene had preserved every fact. Tomas was still present as data, his habits, his final diagnosis, even the exact minute his heart stopped. Only his emotional weight was gone. The procedure did not delete memory. It weakened the alarm that made certain memories hurt, teaching the brain that loss was information rather than an emergency. 48 hours before a national rollout, Lena learned the government would make Eirene mandatory wherever trauma care was publicly funded. Refusal would soon become a privilege few patients had. By then, the treatment looked like an unquestionable success. Hospitals reported fewer crises, insurers reported shorter recoveries, and officials called grief a medical problem humanity had finally solved. Patients slept, returned to work, and spoke the names of the dead without collapsing. Every outcome the trials had been designed to measure improved. The danger appeared in a category no one had planned to track. Eirene was not only reducing suffering, it was quietly changing what the brain considered worth protecting. Lena had created the treatment after Tomas died, when ordinary objects became traps. A cup on the counter could ruin an afternoon because it proved he would never use it again. She volunteered for the first human procedure before long-term safety was known. It was described as scientific courage, but Lena knew the truth. She had become desperate to escape herself. The relief was immediate enough to feel like rescue. 11 months after Tomas's death, she entered their bedroom, saw everything he had left behind, and remained standing. Thousands of early patients described the same return to function. Panic receded, sleep returned, careers survived. Families thanked Lena for giving them back the people grief had taken. But the trials asked whether patients could recall a loved one. They never asked whether patients would still choose that person when choosing became inconvenient. The first warning came from a widower who erased 40 years of family recordings. He remembered what they contained, he simply could not identify a reason to keep them. Another patient remembered every anniversary with her living partner, yet stopped defending the rituals that had made their life feel shared. The dates survived after their meaning disappeared. Two siblings who had endured the same funeral stopped calling each other. Neither was angry. Each remembered the bond perfectly. Neither felt enough urgency to maintain it. Researchers first called these cases adaptation. Then identical changes appeared in patients whose partners, parents, and closest friends were still alive. Loss was no longer required. Eirene patients still enjoyed music, food, ambition, and novelty. They were not emotionally empty. Their feelings simply stopped assigning exceptional value to particular people. 5 years after the rollout, memorial halls remained empty on dates that once filled them. Society had kept the names of its dead and misplaced the reason to return. Long-term couples separated with remarkable calm. They could describe decades of loyalty and sacrifice, yet those histories no longer felt like arguments for staying. The effect strengthened with repetition. Each painless recollection trained the brain again, reducing the priority attached to the person inside the memory. Lena's model suggested that grief had never been only the price paid after love. It was also part of the system that told the brain a bond was irreplaceable. By silencing the alarm, Eirene weakened the label beneath it. Not merely important, but unique. Not merely remembered, but worth choosing over other possibilities. The world did not become openly cruel. It became orderly, productive, and less willing to accept personal cost for anyone who could be replaced by someone else. Care homes received fewer visitors. Volunteer networks thinned. People still understood obligation, but obligation without attachment rarely survived distance, fatigue, or inconvenience. No law commanded abandonment. No patient decided to become heartless. Millions of small acts simply stopped happening, too ordinary to appear in any national safety report. Lena found the pattern only after combining neural scans with years of relationship behavior. That category had been excluded from the original trial because it was considered too subjective. Her own records showed the most severe decline. She had received the highest dose, the earliest version, and more years of painless recall than any person alive. She could describe Tomas in exquisite detail, the scar across his thumb, the songs he entered too early, the apology he always offered before an argument. What she could no longer explain was why losing this one man had once felt different from losing every possible future. The facts remained, their hierarchy had collapsed. Inside a private archive, Lena discovered an audio file marked by her pre-treatment self, "Never delete, even if it stops hurting." The instruction felt irrational now. Only a week earlier, she had nearly erased it. Not from anger, and not because listening was painful, but because preserving it seemed like inefficient storage. The long-term model predicted a threshold beyond which person-specific attachment could no longer sustain love. A patient might remember devotion after losing the capacity to renew it. That warning had existed during the pilot study. Lena had dismissed it as noise because 30 days of data could not prove a social consequence that might take years to appear. She had assured regulators that immediate relief outweighed a theoretical risk. It was not a lie. It was a conclusion selected by someone who needed the treatment to be innocent. Money had not corrupted her judgment. Political pressure had not forced her hand. Grief had done something more persuasive. It had made one answer emotionally necessary. Now the Ministry of Public Health planned to place Eirene in disaster shelters, military hospitals, and every state-funded bereavement clinic, turning an optional procedure into standard emergency care. Within 1 year, 28 million people would receive it. Most would be told their memories were safe. Almost none would be told that attachment itself might continue fading afterward. Lena presented the evidence expecting denial. The ministry accepted her data. Its officials argued that a stable society, even a less attached one, could still be more humane. They showed her lower suicide rates, fewer violent breakdowns, restored employment, and millions of patients who believed Eirene had saved their lives. Then they asked the question Lena could not dismiss: was preserving the capacity for love worth returning panic, addiction, insomnia, and memories that had once made people want to die? A reversal was possible, but not safely tested. Eirene had postponed years of grief without teaching the brain how to receive that grief gradually. If the recovery channel opened globally, decades of loss could return within minutes. Hospitals would face 28 million emergencies with no proven way to predict who would survive them. A slower reversal might have reduced the danger, but the ministry's new firmware would permanently seal the recovery channel, preventing any future government, or any patient, from changing course. After deployment, humanity could continue naming the people it had loved while losing the biological process that made one human life matter more than another. The ministry advanced the rollout by 12 hours and revoked Lena's authority. One maintenance window remained before the new system locked every clinic into the same irreversible protocol. She had 11 minutes to choose between two forms of harm: restore suffering on a scale medicine had never faced, or preserve peace while attachment continued disappearing. The easier choice resembled the one she had made years earlier: remove the pain first, interpret the silence afterward, call whatever remained a cure. Lena opened Tomas's protected recording. It was not a final confession or a carefully prepared goodbye. He had made it before either of them knew ordinary life was ending. He talked about groceries, a broken window, and meeting her after work. Nothing in the message explained why this voice had once been home to her. But her former self had marked the file as essential. A Lena who could still feel the difference between memory and meaning had left evidence for the person she would become. She stopped asking whether grief deserved to exist. The harder question was whether love still meant anything once no loss could wound the person who claimed to feel it. With 4 minutes remaining, Lena inserted the physical maintenance key and reopened the recovery channel before the firmware could erase it from the network forever. The system warned that 28 million patients could experience acute emotional return before local hospitals were prepared. It asked her to confirm responsibility for every foreseeable consequence. Lena added staged release limits, emergency exclusions, and every safety protocol still available. None could make years of delayed grief return without pain. The ministry locked the core and sent security to detain her. By the time the doors opened, the recovery pulse had already crossed into the public health network. To prevent officials from describing the event as blind sabotage, Lena released everything: the long-term model, her approvals, the rejected warnings, and her own deteriorating scan. At midnight, the mandatory Eirene firmware reached every state clinic. Hidden inside the update was the recovery signal the ministry had intended to remove. Then the accumulated losses arrived. Emergency lines filled as old memories regained consequence, and people discovered that time had postponed their grief without reducing what had been lost. Hospitals opened grief wards in gymnasiums and transit halls. Some patients begged to have Eirene restored before the returning pain became fully recognizable. Others called partners, siblings, and friends they had abandoned. They did not know whether recovering attachment could repair the years when caring had seemed unnecessary. Lena experienced the reset while detained. For several seconds, Tomas's recording remained only sound. Then the voice stopped feeling archived and began feeling absent. The groceries, the broken window, the promise to meet after work, those details became unbearable precisely because nothing about them had once seemed important enough to lose. Lena began crying before the message ended. The pain did not prove Eirene had failed to erase grief. It proved Tomas had never been replaceable. Across the world, humanity recovered its grief. Whether it had recovered love, or merely remembered why love had always carried the risk of pain, would take much longer to know.